Okay, assuming we're recording now, I'm going to take that as a yes.
Yeah,
Hi,
you're good to go.
guys. Okay, hi, everyone. I feel like I know everybody, or at least everybody that I can see in my little window, but if there is someone on who doesn't know me, my name is Sarah Eisenberg. I'm a volunteer at Agoura with you all. I've been here at Agoura for like 3.5 years. Before that, I volunteered across like the city systems, West LA, South LA. So I've been volunteering in the shelter world for about 10 years or so. I'm also a certified trainer, so I have my CPDT-KA, which is one of like two nationally recognized certifications. If you've ever talked to Rob Lerner, I'm sure he'll tell you all about the certification process and how unregulated the dog training space is. So I just say that to say that I am a certified trainer. I do have an educational background and a practical background in this. My training and business is entirely separate and unaffiliated with the shelter, but I just want to make sure you guys know why it's me presenting some of this information. So the reason that we're doing this, a few reasons. I know that a lot of volunteers brought it up to Christine when she did her feedback session. And we wanted to make good on that and make sure that we delivered something to you guys. The goal is that this will be like a two-parter. So this sort of session will be our presentation. We'll talk, we'll go through sort of lots of different skills, information around dog behavior, how we can use that in practice in the shelter. And we're going to follow up, I would imagine, sometime in the next 6 weeks with an actual practical session for anyone who wants to join, where we actually work on using some of those skills in the shelter. So that's kind of how this will be designed. My goal, like the underlining goal throughout this entire training, is to make sure that our dogs have the best outcome possible. So what can we do to make sure that they end up in the best place possible, in the right homes, and just that they stay safe and well cared for in the shelter while they're, sort of under our supervision, under our care, and working with us. I also obviously am taking human and volunteer safety really, really seriously as we talk through some of these skills. So I want to make sure I'll probably caveat this. I probably will repeat myself actually a number of times throughout the presentation. I am getting old, but most of it is intentional because if I am repeating myself, I want to make sure that I'm driving those points home. But I do want to caveat this entire presentation to say that if you are ever in a situation with a dog and you don't feel safe, like forget about what I'm saying to you and go through like the safety protocol that we've learned at the shelter. So whether that's blowing your whistle, calling for help, using the tools that are in the yard, safety is always first. A lot of what we're going to talk about is more for like, you're comfortable with the dog, you're just like not exactly sure what to do or how you might want to change their behavior. So keep that in mind as we go through. I'm going to try and keep this whole chatting part to like an hour or a little bit less. And then I do want to save the last part for any discussion or any questions if there are any. So just if you have questions, I think there's a chat. You could probably put them in or just hang on to them until the end. Awesome. Okay. So I've kind of cut this up into 3 sections. The first is self-management. I think a lot of us understand this, but before we even interact with the dog, like our energy, our body language, our communication, and just the way we're regulating ourselves kind of has to be there. So we'll talk about strategies to manage ourselves and our energy before we even interact with the dog. The second section is we'll cover kind of like discernment. And what I mean by that in practice is how do we work with the specific dog in front of us? So at the shelter, obviously, we have tags on the dog's kennels. We have our dogs categorized, just for ease of use. Essentially, this dog is jumpy, this dog is shy, but we meet our dogs in different moments every day, every shift, honestly. And so how do we decide how we work with them based on who they are in that moment and maybe not as much who they've been classified as or how they've been labeled? And then the third section is just going to be sort of the meat of it. Like you're in the yard with a dog who's jumpy, what can you try? You're working with a dog who's in the yard and is now afraid of you, what do you do? So genuine, like practical strategies for working with some of those behaviors. Okay, so starting with self-management, I think we all know this and we all see this when we're at the shelter, but dogs are very clearly like sensitive to our body language, our energy, our own state of arousal. And we see this all the time. Dogs essentially mimic our energy a lot of the time. So, you've probably seen this. A volunteer goes into the yard with a dog who's jumping and they start flailing their arms, maybe because they want to get the dog off of them. Our dogs are going to match that energy, right? So, like, we have to think about what kind of energy do I want to bring to my interaction with this dog? And how can my energy, my state of being, influence that dog's behavior in the moment for the better? Um, I'm not going to talk too much theory. Actually, I think this is the only sort of theoretical piece that I have in this presentation, but I do want to talk a little bit about conditioning and what that means. I would imagine that like we're all familiar with the Pavlov's dog thing, which is like the, you know, most common example of classical conditioning, right? A bell rings and over time the dog starts to salivate because at the end of the bell ring, food comes. So bell rings, food is delivered to a dog. If that happens enough times, that dog is having like an automatic response to the bell. They start to salivate, they get their food. They're not choosing to do that. It's just happening in their body. They've been classically conditioned to expect food after they hear the ring of the bell. But there is a second kind of conditioning. And this is kind of what we're doing all the time, probably with our own dogs and at the shelter, whether we even know it or not. And that's called operant conditioning. And operant conditioning is essentially teaching dogs that their behavior or what they do actually matters. And so the most classic example I can give you of that is the easiest thing, right? Like I teach a dog that if he sits, he gets a treat. So he learns to control his behavior, to control what he does with his body. And he learns if I sit on the ground, food comes. And so that's kind of what we want, or, that might be what we want. But a lot of times we're kind of inadvertently reinforcing behavior that we don't want because we're not thinking about kind of how we're interacting with them in a moment. So to use the example previously, if every time I go into a yard, a dog jumps all over me and maybe I touch the dog because I want to hug the dog, or maybe I'm trying to push the dog off of me, but I'm still touching that dog. I'm still giving that dog attention. I'm kind of inadvertently reinforcing that jumping because I'm saying to the dog, if you jump on me, I'm going to touch you. I'm going to look at you. I'm going to talk to you. And so I bring this up in the context of self-management because I just want us to think about what am I doing right now and what is that teaching the dog in front of me? I'm going to say this like throughout the presentation. I would say like very few moments at the shelter are true training moments. It's just dogs are over their threshold by being there. So I don't say this as a way to say like we should be training the dogs at the shelter. It's more of just a way to kind of think about how we engage with them and what we're actually teaching them with our body language, our movement, our energy, things like that. And the more kind of stable and fluid and consistent we are when we're working with our dogs, the better outcomes they're going to have at the end of the day. So things to think about before you actually engage with the dog that you're working with. I think a lot of this starts before we even meet the dog or before we even handle the dog. So if you're going up to the kennel or you're going up to the yard, you really do want to take a second to just like observe how they are in that moment, even if you know that dog really, really well. We all know this, but like you could have a dog who's usually pretty chill, but right before you got to the shelter, a bunch of kids were running up and down and like freaking them out, or an officer came right up to the kennel with their keys and their heavy boots. And now they're in a moment that we might not have been, we're not familiar with them in that way. So we want to make sure that we're looking at who is this dog in this moment that I'm about to handle them. The second thing I'll say, and I know like probably most of us on this on this meeting already know this, but like the shelter is so chaotic and like people are asking things of us all the time. We're always being asked to multitask. Somebody's panicking. Some person from the public comes in and is trying to talk to us. Like we're trying to do a million different things. That's okay. But if we're going to interact with a dog, we want to make sure that we're present in that moment when we're interacting with them. So if somebody comes up to me while I'm about to take a dog out of the kennel, you can very nicely just say, give me 1 second. I'm going to put this dog in the yard and then I'll come back and talk to you. We just, I'm sure we've all also like, I don't know if this happens to you guys, but like I'll be putting a dog back into the kennel and someone like comes up behind me and starts asking me stuff. And I'm just like, can you hang on 1 second? So just like be aware that when we're handling dogs and we're with dogs, that's where we want our brains to be. We want to be present with the dog for safety and just, to benefit them and to sort of better engage with them. Obviously, careful with your phones. I know we're taking pictures in the yard. I do it too. Like we take pictures, we take videos, but especially like when you're walking a dog, if you're not familiar with the dog, just phones down because it only takes like 1 second for the dog to see something, do something that catches us off guard. And now we have a situation. And then kind of like I was saying, think about what you see, how that dog is behaving. So do you like it? Do you want to encourage more of that? Or would you prefer if they offered you something different? Couple examples, if you go to hang out with a dog and they're really, really jumpy or like in just highly aroused, highly energetic, think about what you can do with your body and your movement and your energy to bring that down. So instead of running into a yard and yelling and talking in a high fast voice, can you calm the dog down? Can you walk a little bit more slowly? Can you be a little bit more still? If you're in the yard, for example, and you start to notice that this dog is like kind of uncomfortable with me, instead of continuing to try to engage, can you just offer them space? Can you back up a little bit? Maybe even leave the yard for a minute. We want our dogs to know that we see them, we feel them, and we're going to respond to them sort of energetically in a way that will be helpful for them and won't push them or flood them, essentially. And then this is a big one for me because I feel like I definitely will have a lot of like physical stress signals in my own life, maybe not at the shelter, but like I'll be in like an anxious or stressful situation and I'll realize like I don't think I've taken a deep breath in like 10 minutes. Like if I'm driving on the freeway and I'm waiting for people to like plow into me, I'm like, I'm not breathing. Like I'm driving down Ventura and I'm just like holding on for dear life. So like the first thing I always say is like when you go to approach a dog, especially a dog you might be a little nervous about or you're not familiar with it, are you breathing? Like take a deep breath, ground yourself, you know, bring yourself back to like that present moment and take care of yourself before you actually interact with that dog. So you're in the right headspace to do it. Some things I'll notice when we're actually handling the dog, like I think a lot of these are counterintuitive and sometimes we have to think about it a little bit, myself included. So when we're holding on to a dog, a lot of times, especially at the shelter, like we want to make sure that we have this, like we have control over them, we have a tight grip, we can sort of manage them in the environment. But the more tightly we grip that leash, the more tension we pass into a dog's body. I think it's one of the reasons, if I'm honest, that a lot of dog to dog intros are so difficult in the shelter because we have two dogs on really short, usually tight leashes, and we are building tension and frustration in those dogs when we grip the leash tightly. So when you're walking a dog, if there's no like triggers right there, if the dog isn't running up to a yard and it's just kind of walking around, see if you can handle that leash a little bit more loosely, give them a little bit more space, a little bit more agency. They'll feel a bit more relaxed. Pay attention to your own body movements. So like dogs really respond well to kind of fluid movement, like confidence, fluid. They don't love fast and jerky. Are you chasing them? Are you running after them? A lot of times we take our hands, if they're above our heads, our arms are above our heads, our dogs are going to follow where our arms go. So if we move our hands up, we move our arms up, up goes the dog. And so just being conscious of like our body positioning, making sure that we're sort of, I guess, aligning our bodies in ways that don't kind of, you know, ask dogs to follow them. So keeping our arms down, making sure that we're moving calmly, slowly, these things can really help regulate a dog, help regulate us as well. And then again, this is kind of like similar to what I've been saying, but try to engage in a way that's calm. Try to regulate your own energy. I think something we all know, but maybe sometimes forget in the moment is that like a lot of the dogs like behaviors that we see or behaviors that we write about really and truly are responses to the environment that they're in. They're not like fixed personality traits, which is sad because they're just sort of trapped in this really, really stressful environment. But it's also cool because it means that we have the opportunity to help them make changes if we know kind of what we need to do. So focusing on regulating our behavior around them can be really beneficial when we meet these dogs. We have the ability to change how they feel in moments, even inside of this like crazy environment, because a lot of the behavior they display just like it's not their core personality, it's just a reaction to the environment that they're in. And so I wanted to just like put together some tips for like kind of staying calm, staying chill in moments where we might feel a little bit stressed or we might feel like a little bit overwhelmed. Um, I did the kennel, the walk, and the yard because obviously that's kind of like our three main points where we hit them at the shelter. It's usually in one of these places. And again, like I said, if you feel like you're truly in danger, just like abort mission and get help. It's never worth harming yourself, getting a dog hurt. Don't push yourself to do something that you don't feel comfortable with. But if you do feel comfortable with the dog and you're just kind of like, I need some tips, these are some things you can kind of think about and follow. So at the kennel, we always want to approach the kennel calmly. Obviously, some dogs are jumping, barking, spinning, others are hiding from us on the inside, but we still want to maintain a calm approach. So we don't want to raise our voices, even if we're excited to see them. I know like I always have like a favorite dog or two, and I'm like so hyped to see them when I get there, but I still want to remain calm when I head over to the kennel. Um, this is a little bit of what I was saying before, but really truly at the kennel, like decide if we're in a training moment or a management moment. And so what I mean by that is this dog so amped, like so ready to go that they're not going to be able to learn in the moment? My feeling is a lot of the time that's a yes. So they're jumping, they're barking, and they're pushing the door open. That's very likely not a moment that we're going to train them to sit nicely in the kennel. And it's almost not fair to ask them to do that because they're ready to blow on out of there. So it's more of a management moment. What's the safest way that we can get them out? And different people feel comfortable with different exit strategies. But we always want to make sure that we have a plan and that we're not asking them for too much in that moment to the point that they'll fail. Um, Speaking of a plan, have a plan, like know which direction you're going to, know what yard you're going to. We know that sometimes there's like, dogs that love to run out and grab a toy. Some of those dogs can be very big and strong. If we want to avoid that, just move the toy bin out of the way. Know you're going to pass it, get it out of the way. Or know they're going to go there and get your body ready to go there too. So like have a plan as to like where they're going, and then also notice, is this dog bothered by the dogs around them? So I know a lot of us already do this, but if you have trouble getting a dog out because the neighbors are bothering them, just close the other dogs inside until you get the dog out. It's really not worth trying to spend so much time getting everybody to calm down. Just manage the moment. That's what we kind of mean by management. And then, yeah, like I said, manage the environment. So it might be like the antagonistic neighbors. It might be making sure folks are out of the way. It might be making sure that the dog is going to, a yard that works for them, without a neighbor that bothers them at the yard. Whatever it is, just kind of know where you're going so you don't get flustered in the in between. On a walk, we want to, like I said, we do want to avoid leash tension. We want to avoid choking up on the leash. I understand in the environment that we're in, sometimes we do have to maintain a little bit of a tighter leash and more control, but the less room we give dogs, the more we're like inadvertently forcing them to pull. Because if I'm giving a dog 2 feet of leash, they walk faster than me anyway. And, they're in the shelter, they're trying to go, they're trying to get out. So if I only give a dog this much room, I'm kind of forcing them to pull me. And I want to make sure that we're not doing that. So we just want to leave a little bit of room on the leash. Um, if a dog has, kooky manners, meaning like they're jumping up on you, they're kind of like coming out of the kennel and they haven't started on their walk yet. They're jumping on you, they're bouncing around. Just stop and wait for the dog to settle down. Wait for the dog to realize that he doesn't get to keep moving until he settles down. So that might just be standing calmly there with the leash until his paws are on the ground. And, then we keep it moving. Like I said, if a dog is jumping up on you, certainly make sure that, you're not encouraging that. Wait and remain calm. But one thing I see often, just as a little tip, I do see a lot of people kind of hold the leash up, but we want to make sure that we're holding the leash up and also out, because if you hold that leash up but in front of your face, the dog's going to follow your hands and kind of jump at your face. So yes, we want to hold the leash away from us so they kind of do what they do next to us, but we want to make sure that that leash is not right in front of our face. So that's just kind of like a positioning tip for holding the leash. And then lastly, in the yard, again, deep breaths and slow down your own movements. Pause if you need to pause. Avoid the urge to like flail, to push the dog off of you, to run around with them. If you're not comfortable or if they're just a little too much, try to create distance. So you want to remove your eye contact, remove attention from them if they're offering jumpy, sort of too excitable behavior. If all else fails, just exit the yard and try and reset. And then if you're trying to create distance, but it's not possible, some things you can do are like tossing food away, down and away from you. If you kind of like keep offering food right in front of you, again, they're going to follow your hand right up to your face. So we want to toss our food down toward the ground and away from you. And you can repeat that for a few cycles to kind of get them in a pattern of finding their reward on the ground and further away from you. And then obviously, if you don't feel physically threatened or in danger, like I know we sometimes have dogs where we're like, this is so uncomfortable that I just can't do this. But if you don't feel that way, truly like wait them out. Dogs are such opportunists and they're going to try and figure out how they can get from you what they want. I think someone's off mute, and if everyone could mute their mics, that'd be great. But that said, what I mean by that is if a dog is jumping all over me and I turn around and I just wait for them to put their paws on the ground, we've talked about this, but as soon as I do, then I'm going to engage with them. When dogs can figure out what it is you want from them, it's a lot more powerful because of the operant conditioning that we talked about earlier. Once they realize that their behavior is meaningful and their behavior can drive our reaction, they're going to do what they need to do to get what they want. Okay, so moving on to discernment. Again, what I mean by that is truly handling the dog in front of you. So helpful handling starts with understanding that every dog is different, and that what might help one dog feel safe or supported, or happy or engaged, that same thing might overwhelm or frustrate a different dog. So when we have discernment, we know how to adjust our approach, like based on the individual dog's emotional state, history, whatever their individual needs are, instead of relying on like a one size fits all method. It gives us the ability to understand, what does this individual dog want in the moment. So when we learn to like read the dog in front of us, we're able to create safer interactions, we're able to build more trust and like set us both up for success. So just a few things to keep in mind here. Where do we focus? How do we discern what's going on with the dog? The first thing, of course, is body language. So I could honestly probably do like an hour on dog body language, but there's so much to it. But we always want to check and like notice the dog's body language across the entirety of their body. So what are their ears doing? Are their ears pinned back? Are their ears straight up? Are they floppy and relaxed? Is their body stiff? Is their body loose? Are they making eye contact with you? Is it friendly, like relaxed eye contact, or are they kind of fixated on you? Do they look like I'm going to get you if you don't move away from me. What is their tail doing? I think, the tail is like one of the most classic signals. Oh, the dog's tail is wagging, they're happy. But that's not necessarily the case. Yes, a loose wag, like a full body wag, kind of neutral level is usually indicative of a happy dog. But if a dog's tail is straight up and wagging, that's could be a little bit of a challenge. They might feel a little bit threatened. When a dog's tail is wagging down, kind of like against the back of their legs, that usually means they're nervous or they're afraid. We want to check their mouths as well, obviously for a little bit of a lip curl, a snarl, a growl, and even a yawn. Excessive yawning is totally a stress signal in dogs. It's not just that they're tired. A lot of times that's how they're releasing tension through their jaw. So we want to notice, are they stressed or is their mouth kind of relaxed? And the last one, I think we probably are all familiar with this, but whale eye is a big one. So whale eye is when the whites of a dog's eyes are very, very visible. And that generally means I'm nervous. I don't like this, kind of back off. So we want to kind of like take in the whole of the dog. And then if we're with the dog, is the dog moving toward you? Is the dog just hanging out where they are? So a lot of the time we assume that dogs want us to interact with them. But I really want us to start noticing, does this dog seem like they want to interact with me? Are they moving toward me? If I take a step toward them, do they take a step toward me, or do they take 5 steps away from me? So kind of they're offering us clues all the time with what they're doing and what they're expressing. So we want to make sure we're paying attention to those things. Evaluate the moment that you're in itself. So, assess the mood, like using those body language signals and kind of what they're doing. Do they seem kind of overstimulated? Do they seem anxious, nervous, frustrated, whatever it might be? And if you can, I think a lot of times we can kind of figure out what's driving that mood. Sometimes we don't know because, obviously we're coming in on shifts and we don't know what happened before. We don't know what happened with the volunteer before us, or maybe they were in the clinic. But a lot of times we can tell, oh, it's this dog next to them that's stressing them out, or these people are running back and forth around the yard, or somebody's making them nervous, or they're really hungry and their food's in the kennel and they're trying to get at the kennels, or they're trying to get at their food in the kennel. So can we tell what's making them feel the way they're feeling? And if we can we change it for the better? So can we move a dog away from a dog that's stressing them out? Can we ask somebody to take a step back? Can we ask for space? What can we do to maybe help ease an uncomfortable mood? Or what can we do to help continue a joyful, happy mood? Maybe more toys, more engagement, whatever it is. So just trying to discern what we might be able to do to kind of adjust or keep the mood that we're in. And then again, really trying to figure out, in this moment, is this dog capable of adjusting? Are they capable of learning something different? There's a lot of ways to figure it out. Obviously, if a dog is heavily panting, avoiding eye contact, not responding to you, there's a good chance that they're probably not capable or ready to learn something new in the moment. So it might just be about supporting them through that moment. If they're super engaged, if they're really with you, then maybe we can try and teach them something, or we can try, to help them learn a new skill. But we want to make sure that a dog is not over his or her threshold while we're trying to teach them something. One other way that you really can tell, certainly some dogs are particular about food, but most dogs, especially at the shelter, generally want to take most of our food. So if a dog is not taking your treats, that's a very, very obvious signal that they're uncomfortable. And they're probably not capable of learning in the moment or doing what you want them to do in that moment. So just sort of notice, oh, this dog isn't taking food at all. It's not that they don't like chicken, they're just overwhelmed by the rest of their environment. And then adjusting the routine to the individual dog. So I think this is something, we maybe don't do enough. And I'm certainly not suggesting that we invent a new protocol, but I think at Agoura, our standard protocol is we take the dog out of the kennel, we take them to the yard, we hang out with them for a bit, we take them on a walk, and we take them back to the kennel. But it does not work for every dog. So some dogs don't fare that well in the yard for whatever reason. Maybe they need a break from the noise. Maybe they need, it's they're too overstimulated by other dogs or us. Like, for those of you who might work with Myra, she's a great example of a lovely dog who just does not perform her best in the yard. So maybe the yard time isn't the best for her. Maybe we find other things to do with a dog like that. Maybe we take them for an extra 3 laps. Maybe we hang out in the corral or the real room. Sometimes I like to sit on the bench with a dog and just watch. There are ways to adjust the routine even at the shelter when we see that it's not working. So don't be afraid to adjust that for different dogs, as long as it's safe. Another example might be if a dog is, let's say, running the fence no matter where we put them. They're not having fun in the yard probably. So maybe we lessen the yard time there and we think of something else to do. And I know it's hard in our environment. We do not have a ton of options, but to the extent that we can, we shouldn't be afraid to adjust that if we don't think it's working for the dog that we're handling in the moment. And then just some helpful reminders to think about or just kind of keep in your back pocket. Dogs are not one way, like especially in a shelter. Even our own dogs, like they change in the house. They change based on who's in the house, who's not in the house, if they're in pain. There are millions of reasons why dogs are not the same in every moment. The shelter only amplifies that, right? The environment, it's not stable. It's not predictable. It's like honestly an upsetting environment a lot of the time. And so we can't expect that they will behave the same way in every interaction with every person. We see this in the reports sometimes, like a dog is really easy for one person to handle, really not easy for another person to handle. Could be the moment, could be, the moment they met them in, might be something about the person. But just like remembering that just because a dog was one way yesterday doesn't mean they're going to be that way tomorrow. Another thing that I think is really important is that triggers stack very quickly, especially in the shelter. So triggers meaning anything that sort of affects a dog. That could be other dogs walking by, people walking by, officers walking by, people putting their hands in a kennel, having just been at the clinic. Maybe it's really hot. Maybe they got rained on. There are so many things that happen to these dogs at the shelter so quickly, either at the same time or in quick succession. And we don't always know it because our schedules rotate. So we don't know what has been happening to this dog right before we handle them. So just a reminder that a lot of the time a dog is behaving in the way that he is because of all of the things that seem to be happening to him at once, or really like one after the other. Another thing, I hate to harp on semantics, and I don't mean to do that here, but I do think it's really important that we don't label a dog, we describe what we see instead. So language matters for so many reasons. When we call a dog something, it tends to stick. So if I call a dog reactive, now we start to think about that dog as reactive. We start to talk about him as reactive. We start to assign this kind of personality or this judgment to a dog when really we don't know because of the environment that we're in, and it could change moment to moment. We just don't want to do that here. So I really like when we describe what we see. So instead of saying he's reactive, we say he barks at the fence. Instead of saying he's aggressive, we might say he barked at a man. We want to just describe the actual behavior that we see instead of taking it that next step and saying he is this or he is that. Hopefully that's clear. I think so. Food as a reinforcer. So for most dogs, like food's going to be the highest value reinforcer. Not all of the time. Some dogs are attention seekers. Some dogs are like huge toy dogs. So you can kind of like, figure out what works for them. But food can also lead to overarousal, and sometimes it can increase unwanted behavior. So if you go into a yard and the dog cannot stop digging at your fanny pack, or if you have food in your pocket, can't stop digging at the food, consider not bringing food into the yard with you or into that interaction with the dog. So using discretion about when to use food, if it's helping, if it's, the goal of food is essentially to help dogs offer behavior that we'd like to see. So if the food is actually acting in a way that it's, creating behaviors we don't want to see, maybe leave it out for that moment. We don't want dogs mouthing us, grabbing us, scratching our clothes to get at the food. I think I said this a little bit already, but again, we cannot define inherent personality in the shelter, like, at all. I think one thing I'd like myself to do better, and I'd like all of us to do better, is just kind of remember that we have to be okay with like some uncertainty when we're talking about dogs, when we're talking to adopters about the dog that they're meeting. We can only talk about what we see inside of the shelter. And certainly there are clues. And I'm not saying that stuff we see in the shelter doesn't translate outside of the shelter, but sometimes it really doesn't. The environment is inconsistent. The people they hang out with and meet are inconsistent. And it really is too stressful of an environment to define who they are. So a lot of times when I'm in an introduction with someone or I'm talking about a dog, I might just say, I've noticed this here, but I don't know how he'll be or she'll be when he goes home. Like, we have to kind of just get a little more comfortable being a little bit more uncertain with how that dog will behave outside of the shelter. And then the last thing that I want to just kind of touch on is to like, I understand that sometimes we see behavior and we think we know what might have created it, but a lot of times we don't. So there are so many reasons why dogs behave the way they do. And most of the time we don't have enough info to really explain it. So just notice what's actually happening in front of you instead of like creating a story about why it's happening. Like, a really obvious example or easy example is, you go to reach over a dog's head and pet them and they duck. And a lot of us think, oh, they must have been abused. They must have been, maybe hit, or they must have had an uncomfortable experience. In reality, like, dogs just do not like an overhead reach. There might be nothing behind that. And I just say that to say that a lot of the times we just don't know. So we don't want to build up a story that may or may not be true. Okay, moving on to the last section, which is essentially just practical strategies for working with like all of the different behaviors that we see. And we see so many at the shelter. So I have picked like, I want to say like 6 or 7 that I feel like we see all the time. And I'm going to talk about like why it can be happening and then what we can do in the moment. And this is probably where we'll focus a lot of our like practical hands-on session. I probably won't cover everything because there's so many different behaviors that we deal with, but hopefully this gets to like the meat of it. So I think this is like the classic, like this would be like the classic burger on the menu, which is like the jumpy, mouthy dogs, the dogs that are jumping all over us, that won't get off our backs, that are like just hard to handle because we can't get them to like relax. So why are dogs jumpy and mouthy at the shelter, or really otherwise? They're overstimulated, or I should have put this, they're overstimulated or they're understimulated, right? Like, there's too much going on and they can't focus themselves, or they're understimulated to the point that they haven't had enough exercise, they haven't had enough mental stimulation, and they come out like raring to go. They're frustrated. I think that's self-explanatory. I think every dog we have at the shelter is probably frustrated in some way, and many times that frustration comes out through like just jumpy, over-the-top behavior. Um, Perhaps they're seeking our attention. Dogs put our paws on us because they want us to pay attention to them. Some dogs are just young, puppy-like behavior. They haven't learned yet that jumping doesn't get them what they want. It's just, puppies and dogs in general, but certainly young dogs struggle with impulse control, and they're just, every time they see us, they want to jump all over us. Jumpiness is, I would say, like probably one of the most inadvertently reinforced behaviors, because we all tend to try and push dogs off of us, tell dogs no, push them down when they do it. And to a dog, they like it, right? That's attention. So a lot of dogs just feel like that's a good thing because they've accidentally been taught that it is. Might just be their inherent play style, might be a genetic thing. They could be stressed out, or they might be trying to communicate a need with us. That need might be, give me that treat. That need might be, let's go on a walk, or, I got to get out of this kennel, whatever it is. So how do we deal with jumpy and or mouthy dogs at the shelter? First thing is always, and again, I won't say this anymore. I know I'm getting annoying, but like if you feel unsafe, please leave. Please don't put yourself in a position where you might get hurt to do some of these things. Again, this is like if you feel comfortable and you want to try. So the most important thing with dogs that are jumping all over us is that we don't meet that energy back. So I don't push, I don't shove, I don't flail, I don't say anything. Really and truly, you do not need to say anything to a dog who is jumping on you. You don't need to tell them no. You don't need to tell them off. They don't need a cue or a command for this. All they need to know is that jumping on us does not get them the attention or the food or whatever it is that they're looking for. That's all you need to do is disengage. Some obvious things like do not lean over a dog that is jumpy or has a tendency to jump. You will probably get pawed in the face or knocked over. Stay standing and stay sturdy on your feet. Reduce like any stimulation where you can. So obviously we don't do tug at the shelter anyway, but like no rough play, no chasing balls, nothing high energy. Try and bring the energy down. So that means adding some stillness to your own movement, turning your back on them, just really as calmly as you can, not responding to them. There's an exercise that I like to do with dogs that are jumpy, which is really just rewarding like calm moments as soon as all of their paws are on the ground. So I have a video, maybe I'll play it after, but basically what I like to do is just walk around with the dog kind of calmly and slowly. And I'm just going to tell them yes or good and toss a treat away from myself on the ground every few seconds as their paws are on the ground. If they jump on me, I stop rewarding them. As the paws go back on the ground, I reward them again, down and away from me. And so what I want them to learn with that is, yeah, I get rewarded. I get food when my paws are on the ground. I get nothing when I'm jumping all over you. So that's like one kind of exercise that we'll demonstrate maybe in person. Um, Definitely create some space before it like escalates if you see it coming. What I mean by that is like if the dog's in the corner of the yard and you're in the other corner and you see them start coming for you, like truly walk out of the yard. There's no reason that you have to like take that. That also teaches them that when they kind of like make a run at you, you're gonna leave. And that's not what they want. On the leash, like when dogs are jumping on the leash, some respond differently. So you can try a few things. You can pause and wait. That's for me, that's like my favorite thing to do, which is just for them to wait and sort it out. Obviously, if there's like another person with a dog near you, or if it's kind of chaotic where you are, you might want to try and at least get them to a quieter part of the walk or quieter part of the shelter. But I like for them to wait and just figure out what it is they need to do before we start moving again. And usually they will figure it out, but not every dog. Some dogs will just stand there and spin and get more and more tangled up in the leash. So if it's not working for you, you can try a couple of other things. You can certainly toss some food down and like ahead of you. Obviously, if we toss it right underneath the dog, they're just going to kind of get the food and pop right back up. So I want to start creating like the pattern of movement forward. So I'm going to take the treat and I'm going to toss it ahead, gently on the ground. So we kind of get them in that pattern of walking and hopefully kind of, refocus them to their walk and not on us. If you're passing like a spot in the shelter that's sniffy, the best one I can think of is like by the big gate, like where all the plants are. You can use the find it game if you're familiar with that. It's not a very challenging game. You have some food in your hand, you show them at their nose, you let them smell it, they know you have it. You say find it and you toss it in the bushes and give them a minute to just like search for it, reorient toward the ground, do something else, refocus their brain away from your body and onto the ground, and then keep it moving. Like I said before, try and leave slack on the leash. The tighter you grip, the closer they are to your body. So like the closer they are to jumping on you. But also like if you're holding the leash close to your body, they're going to jump up on your body. So make sure that that leash is up and out while they work it out. Okay, fearful and shy dogs. So, I mean, obviously these are just like sort of group of reasons. There could always be more reasons that we don't know, but why are dogs fearful in the shelter? Why are they shy with us, shy with the staff, shy with, whomever's handling them? So obviously the environment itself is really overwhelming. Some dogs are more resilient to it, some dogs are less. So the constant noise, the barking, unfamiliar people, um, sometimes some smells can be upsetting, confinement anxiety, dogs that are already anxious, that might already have a little bit of a little bit of anxiousness to their personality, when they're confined in like a kennel or a crate type environment, there's a ton of research around this actually, but usually if a dog is anxious, when we confine them, it only amps up that anxiety. So being in a kennel is already going to sort of make that a little bit more challenging for them. And just an overall lack of predictability. Like, we obviously do our best to create a routine for them, but we can't recreate what they would have in like a happy and healthy home. And so just that lack of predictability is very challenging for some dogs, and some shut down as a result of it. We've all met the dogs who like are surrendered, right? Like, they lost their home, they lost their family, maybe another animal that they were bonded to, maybe their person passed away. So all of these sort of traumatic incidents obviously can affect a dog and make a dog sort of shut down. Limited socialization with humans, like, dogs are not born knowing who humans are to them. They learn that or they should. We want them to learn that as puppies. Some don't. And so they just have no idea what we are and what we're supposed to be to them. Um, some dogs have previous like terrible experiences with people or with dogs, but like some of them just have had bad experiences with people. They haven't been treated well. They might have been restrained in a way that was uncomfortable. A lot of times we see dogs that are afraid or, show sort of signs of maybe like slight aggression around a leash. We don't know. Perhaps they were restrained in a way that wasn't comfortable for them. Um, genetics and breed characteristics can always play a role in really any behavior, any personality. It's usually, like they say with humans, like a nature nurture thing. So even if there is like a genetic predisposition, there's usually something that has happened in the environment that has amped it up. A big one that I always want to point out is pain, illness, like being uncomfortable. Like, a dog who has physical discomfort, who is sick, who is in pain, who is extremely tired, that's going to impact their personality so much. And usually dogs who are experiencing pain or experiencing illness want to protect their bodies. So the closer we move toward them, the more uncomfortable they become. They're uncomfortable with touch or reach because they're protecting whatever it is, that's making their body feel uncomfortable. So that's definitely something to note and notice. And I know we're all very good at recognizing those signs. I think important to keep doing that. Sometimes I'm guilty of this. Like, we move these dogs so quickly through like their routine. Like, we take them out of the kennel, we put them in the yard, we take them around for the walk. We do the whole routine, and we do it so quickly that we're not giving them enough time to like take the experience in and like decompress in each part of it. So sometimes like we're just moving way too quickly for them to feel comfortable. And of course, dogs absolutely have specific triggers. Sorry to the men, it's not their fault, but men tend to be taller, bigger, heavier, louder. Their shoes are heavier, their footsteps are heavier. They're a little bit more, scary when they lean over a dog. So that is why dogs can be sort of uncomfortable around men. It's not necessarily that men are meaner to them. They just have a scarier physical presence. Same thing with kids, right? Like, most kids are not intentionally trying to bother dogs. They just don't understand that they are bothering dogs. And those fast, jerky movements at eye level can be really triggering for them. Again, loud voices, leashes, doorways, kennel bars, like, we don't necessarily even know what those triggers are, but they can all be present and cause a dog to just feel afraid or shut down a little bit. So how do we work with fearful, shy dogs? First thing we want to do is building trust without pressure. So allowing space for the dog, giving them the choice to come toward you, to retreat away from you, to stay at a distance, whatever they're comfortable with. This is something I really do like to kind of hone in on a little bit, but like we are not here as individuals to be the singular person to break the dog out of their shell. If we do that, we have almost definitely gone too quickly with them. Like our aim really is to be one of many, many humans who slowly build trust with them over time. So the 20 minutes that I might spend with a dog, that is neutral or positive. And then the next volunteer spends another 20, and that's neutral, maybe positive. Over days, over weeks, dogs learn, hey, like these people are cool, they're safe. Now I'll come out of the kennel. Now I'll let you pet me. Now I'm actually excited to see you. But we don't want it to happen, or it's not going to happen in this one big moment. It's all of these little positive interactions that we all have with that fearful dog over time. That's what breaks them out of their shell. So I just like to remind us of that, because sometimes it can be so frustrating. Like, I couldn't get this dog out of the kennel today, or like she wouldn't come near me, or she wouldn't take my food. It's not you, but that decent experience will build and linger in their brain over time. And the more that they have, the faster and the more successfully we'll be able to get them to interact and engage with us. Um, Again, like respecting body language and their signals. So truly don't push them. If it's obvious they don't want to mess with you, don't mess with them. Leave them alone. We want to avoid leaning over them, reaching toward them. You do not need to touch a dog at all if they seem uncomfortable. If all you are able to do is, let's say, get them out into the yard, you don't have to touch them again. You don't have to pet them. Just let them exist in your space. Things like avoiding direct eye contact, not challenging them, that's going to be helpful. And then, of course, giving them the time to approach. So if they're struggling to let you leash them, you can toss food, you can leave, you can try again in a little while, or you can ask a volunteer on the next shift to try again. Again, building those little interactions. And then letting the dog initiate the interaction with us. So like sometimes just being in the same space with them is a lot or enough. If they approach you, great. If they don't, also great. If they are interested in food, we definitely want to use kind of gentle food tosses away from us instead of asking them to come up and take food from our hand. That kind of creates a nice association with us that we have food for them, but we're not forcing them to do something uncomfortable to get it. So I'm just going to toss the food away. And then the consent test, which really is just in this case, if they come close enough to me that they let me pet them, I'm going to pet them for like 3 seconds. I'm going to count to 3 in my head, and then I'm going to stop. And I'm going to see what the dog does. And if she takes a few steps away from me, she's telling me, I didn't want that, or I don't want that anymore. And I'm going to respect that. If she stays near me, I'm going to repeat my test and see what she does. And if she leans into me, or if she kind of nudges me or comes closer to me, then I'm going to assume that she liked that and she wants me to pet her a little bit more. So giving the dog a little bit of touch, a little bit of petting, and then allowing them to kind of tell you, did I like this? Did I not like this? And they sort of help us figure out how to continue with them. So this is like my little video of Tosina from when she was first with us. And I just liked this video because you can kind of see her in the middle of what I was just talking about. She's interested, right? Like she wants to come toward me, but the environment itself, the barking and the craziness and the loudness was overwhelming for her. You could see that there was interest there, and we were building interest with her, but when she got too close to the chaos, to the noise, she retreated. And so we let her do that over time. And now we know her to be like really friendly and like happy to see people. And she's come such a long way. And that wasn't because any one person dragged her out. It was because we kind of just let her build that anticipation, decide that she was ready to do it, and then do it. Okay, so dysregulated or over-aroused dogs. So these are the dogs who are like frantic. We call them reactive. They're explosive. They're distracted. They can't focus on us. So why are they like this? Chronic exposure to barking, noise, chaos, lots of movement. Something that I actually don't think about that often, but is like really and genuinely true is like these dogs are truly like not getting the sleep that they need. There is such a lack of quality sleep at the shelter. They don't have opportunities to decompress. Constantly changing their routine, handlers are changing, their environment is changing. Some dogs have barrier frustration or confinement frustration. So they're totally fine when they're walking around the shelter, but when they're behind the fence or behind the kennel, they're frustrated, they're displaying frustration. Um, some dogs have elevated stress hormones from being in the shelter for so long that they just cannot re-regulate down. So their hormones keep going up and up and up. And even if they regulate, they're never getting to that baseline. They're always kind of staying a little bit above. And so they can't calm themselves down in this environment anymore. And then some, of course, like just genuine frustration in relation to the other dogs around them. Maybe they don't want anything to do with them. Maybe they're desperate to play, right? Like the frustrated greeter that just wants to play with every dog they see. So the presence of other dogs can be really frustrating, obviously. When we're dealing with these dogs, our goal is to downshift their nervous system and to get them to settle and to get them to breathe. We don't want to lean into that dysregulation. We want to sort of change it and bring it down. So if we can, we want to remove the dog from the trigger. If that is a dog that's running the yard, we want to remove the dog from the yard. They don't need to be in there if all it's doing is stressing them out, for example. I think we do this often, but if there's like a dog, if there's two dogs that are next to each other in the kennels and they're driving themselves crazy, we move one of them. We don't need them to be staying stuck in that environment. I'm a really big fan of slow walks, so like sniffy walks in life and at the shelter. So we all know that the more a dog can sniff, the more they're able to kind of calm down. Sniffing really is something that takes a dog's kind of nervous system down, like physiologically. So maybe instead of taking 2 quick laps around, I'm just going to spend a lot of time on the side where the plants are, behind like the empty turtle and bunny cages, back by the rocks. Just places where the sniffs are better than, let's say, like the pavement or like the rescue or whatever is going on in the back. Go back to the corral and just let them explore. That's going to kind of help downshift them. You can totally try like the food games or the puzzles as well. I find that a lot of dogs figure them out really quickly, but it can't hurt and it'll give them a few minutes of enjoyment to focus on something else. And then some dogs, as we know, do really well in the real room. So they get that quiet time, they get to sleep in there. You know, it's the dog that you take in there and they pass out within 2 minutes because they haven't slept well in 3 days. So these kinds of things, sitting on the bench, just observing. What can we do to help them decompress and to take them out of the most chaotic piece of their environment? Okay, so the bolters, I'll be honest, the bolters stress me out the most because like it's stressful. You go up to a kennel and you're like, I know that this dog is gonna run for their lives past me. And I never want that to happen. But it happens for lots of reasons. Again, high arousal, pent up energy from being confined, barrier frustration, like lots of excitement or anticipation to finally get outside, get into the yard, engage with us. Stress and urgency that's just built up because of the environment. Sometimes it's a learned behavior, like rushing out of doors, maybe in a previous home has worked for them. Usually, like I think it's a little bit more of that sort of frustration and over arousal, but you never know. Some dogs are fearful and they're trying to escape. So they're just trying to get out. It's like fireworks, right? Like the dogs hear fireworks and they're just trying to leave. They don't know where they're going. They don't know what they're doing, but they're like, that's scary and I got to get out of here. So that happens as well. And then obviously, of course, we have our urine holders and our poop holders who are like desperate to use the bathroom. So dealing with bolters, these are my best strategies and tips. You want to use, whatever feels safest to you. Um, if you really are nervous that a dog's going to bolt by you, like you really are, truly get back up. Have somebody stand behind you with their leash. So, you've got someone there to sort of help. If they start to bolt, they can try and throw their leash as well, or they can kind of like safely body block a dog that's, trying to make a run for it. It's always safer to do this with 2 people if you're even slightly uncertain. Um, I like to keep the kennel door opened narrowly. This works for me. It may or may not work for you, but you kind of want to position your body in a way that might help prevent escape. For me, that's like sometimes turning sideways at the kennel door. crouching down for the smaller dogs so they don't kind of like nutmeg me and go between my legs. Obviously, you don't want to like stand right in front of the kennel, so you're going to get knocked over when they run out. But if you can make that opening as small as possible, you're in good shape. Collar holds. If you're going to have a collar hold, I would say two things. Number one, make sure you're holding the collar positioned backwards, because if you hold it up or you hold it toward you, they're just going to slip right out of that collar. So you want to make sure you're holding it back so they're not going to slip out of the collar. And if you're going to do it, you want to have that slip ready to go. So you take the collar and the slip goes right over their head and you go. If you feel like you're going to struggle with that, or it's going to take you a minute, you're going to be wrestling, holding the collar, don't do it. Avoid. You can grab a stuffy. So some of the dogs, like Duke that we have, for example, he really likes to take a stuffy coming out of the kennel. It helps him refocus away from getting out, bolting out. So you can grab a stuffy and give them something to hold on to while you leash them. It'll just take their attention away from bolting for 3 seconds. You can get the leash on and you can go. If a dog does escape on you, obviously blow your whistle. If you have the radio, like radio them. I'm always like, I don't know how to use this radio, but that's a me thing. So if you have it, communicate. We want to make sure that anyone who has a dog like on the grounds knows that you're out there and a dog got loose, and to be careful. And then always try to guide them back into their kennel or into an empty yard. So the more help with that, the better. Don't try and chase them around the shelter. If they do get loose, try and start to walk backwards a little bit, beckon them toward you. Try and get them to come toward you. Don't start chasing them. They're just going to keep running from you, because for most of them, they've escaped and now it's a game. And then just a little caveat, if you are CC and you feel comfortable entering the kennel to get a bolter, you can absolutely do that. I find that the safest way is to close the dog into like the inside part and then just kind of slowly open the hatch. I like to loop the dog right there at the hatch and then go. And then obviously don't close or latch the outside door behind you, because you never want to be locked inside of a kennel with a dog. And sometimes those doors can get stuck or they're hard to open with your finger. So make sure the door is like slightly cracked. If you're not confident that you can do this safely, you don't want to get trapped in the kennel with the dog, don't do it. Again, only if you feel comfortable. So we have our pancakers and our floppers. So these are the guys that just like lay down and we're like, okay, how am I going to get you back to the kennel? So a lot of times they just don't want to go back to the kennel, and why would they? And they pick up very quickly that that's what's happening and they don't want to do it. Sometimes there is like some pain or some discomfort. They don't want to walk anymore. So we want to make sure that we're looking for those signs and we don't pull them around or drag them, or try to like make them walk any more than they can comfortably walk. We want to note, is there a limp or is something off with their gait? Do they look a little sick? Even dogs that might have an ear infection, something that isn't related to walking, that can influence walking behavior. So note those things. Some dogs have zero leash training and they just like have no idea what to do on the leash. So that will come over time, but they might just flop. They might just stop. They might just not know what to do on the leash. Some dogs just don't trust us yet. They don't trust to move with us. They don't know where we're going and they're not comfortable moving with us or moving close to us. And similarly, some dogs are trying to avoid moving towards something else that they might see as unsafe. They might be afraid of something in the environment. So we have the dogs that, don't like to go around the back. We, cut through by the cat room because they're afraid of the back area, or they might be just afraid of a certain part of the shelter. So kind of starting to notice, is there a pattern? Do they not want to go this way or that way? That can happen as well. But one thing to note for sure, dogs are truly and genuinely not stubborn for like the sake of being stubborn. That's a human thing. Humans act stubborn for whatever reasons we do. With dogs, when they seem stubborn, it's really just a means of communication. Like they're trying to tell us something, probably one of these things that we went through, and it's like up to us to figure it out. They're not just being like, LOL, like I'm not going to do this to piss you off. That's just not a trait that dogs have. So my most successful way of getting a pancaker or a flopper up off the ground is I want to turn and face them first of all. I want to engage with them. I want to make eye contact with them. And then I like to move or jog or skip backwards and like beckon them toward me with an excited voice. I want to like our body movement is so important to dogs and they will follow it. Not every time, but turning to face them, moving backwards, skipping, jogging, whatever it is you can do to get them going again, that's going to be so much more effective than pulling them. Obviously, we don't want to drag, pull, yank, but it's going to be so much more effective than trying to kind of pull them along behind us. It helps to create that forward momentum for them. So you can totally try that. A little bit of gentle pressure is okay. We really don't want to put a lot of pressure on their neck, so we don't want to drag or pull them. Like truly, we don't want to do that. Obviously, many of us will try treat trails with the most high value treat you can find. Like I like to have some real meat or something very smelly, stinky. The grosser it is to me, the more they like it. Because a lot of times, though, as good as the treat is, their desire to like not return to the kennel or avoid something or whatever reason they have for flopping is going to override their desire to eat in that moment. So you can absolutely try a treat trail. It absolutely works sometimes, but don't be surprised if it doesn't and you need to use another method. If they're really stuck, you can definitely find assistance. So this is a 2-person job, unless it's like a very small, very, friendly dog that you can pick up. But if you have a big dog that's flopped, find somebody else and grab the sling or a folded towel. And you can sort of like help encourage them with that sling right in front of their back legs. I'll demonstrate this if anyone needs me to in our handling session, but you can use a sling to kind of help get them going back into the kennel. But you don't want to do that alone. It's just too hard to do it safely and comfortably for the dog. And if you can, try not to use your leash. That can be a little bit painful. Lots of verbal encouragement. We don't necessarily have to overwhelm them, but we want to use our like happy Disney voices, not our like, you're frustrating me and come on, let's go. We want to be happy, fun. We want to make them come with us. And then the last thing I'll say is like, if we have a dog who is like very committed to not walking and really just wants to go back to their kennel, like you don't have to walk them. If you're worried that you're going to get stuck, or you can just tell that the dog doesn't want to walk, you do not have to walk the dog. You can return them to their kennel. Okay, the last thing I wanted to talk about, I think this is the last thing, is just fence fighting. So I have like 2 things here, 2 videos. The first is like actual fence fighting. So the dogs on the left, they are not happy to be on opposite sides of the barrier. It's very clear. You can see one of them is showing their teeth. The other one is barking incessantly. They're growling. It's not friendly. We definitely have dogs that do that. And we'll talk about how we manage that. But I also wanted to show an example of fence play, just because I think it's important to differentiate, because fence play is really nice. So this was Lola and Marble from a few months ago. And you can look at their body language and you can tell that they're playing, right? So we see a lot of play bows. You'll see, I think at some point, Marble or Lola will play bow. You can see they're both loosely wagging. There's a nice play bow. Nobody's growling. They're kind of pawing at each other. Like, this would be so fun if we could play. And I wanted to compare them because just because dogs are running the fence with each other doesn't mean we have to separate them. That kind of fence play can be really fun and really nice for them. But if we are seeing fence fighting like we saw on the left, we want to make sure we have some strategies to sort of stop it, break it up, and end it in a way that keeps us safe. So the first thing I'll say is if you haven't worked with a dog before, or you haven't seen like any notes on how they are in the yard, you can totally keep the leash around them for a few minutes, because that's going to make it much easier to grab them in the event that like they do start to fence fight or they don't like the neighbor on the other side. So I like to, if I haven't worked with a dog at all, I might leave the leash on for a couple of minutes just to see like what their vibe is when there's another dog on the other side. Obviously, if we do start to see that kind of fence fighting, we want to separate them immediately. It's not good for anybody. Even if they can't get at each other, it's not good for either dog. So you can try to call the dog off using food, that backwards motion I was talking about, a toy, anything that you think might work. It may work, it may not, depending how fixated they are on the other dog. Definitely do not stick your dog or do not stick your hands near their face or try to use your hands to interrupt the fighting at all. We do not want anybody to get hurt, and your hand just a lot of times gets in the way. So if they are running the fence and it's not play, this is something, again, this is more something I think I'll demonstrate, but like what you can do or you can try is if you make a really large loop with your slip lead and you kind of put it in their path when they're running, you know, across the fence toward you, you want to make sure your body is out of the way. But the goal is that they'll run right into your slip. You can pull it right up and take them out. Now, if you're worried that they might redirect on you, or you're worried that you can't do that safely, don't do it. I will demonstrate it, but it is just a way to kind of like separate it if you feel confident doing that. And then the last thing, I actually bring these with me. I think the yards should have them. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But if there's pet corrector spray or a mini air horn, you can use those tools to like put a loud sound into the environment and, you know, try and break it up that way. You're going to scare probably some of the other dogs too, but if it's really over the top, you can use one of those tools. And obviously, you can get help if you need help. The last thing I'll say is like, if you're really struggling to get one of the dogs away, you can go into the other yard and see if the other dog is easier. So sometimes one dog is more fixated than the other, and we might have to switch the yard that we're in to figure out which dog is easier to get away to separate. So remember, you can do that too. That's all I got. I know I went a little bit over the time that I said I was, but I think we still have like 15 or 20 minutes if anybody wanted to like talk or ask a question or share an experience. Go for it. Happy to. But if we're all just tired and want to go to bed, I totally get that too. But anyway, I hope this was helpful in some way.
It was extremely helpful, Sarah. Thank you. I learned a lot.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Obviously I recognize your voice, but I'm going to go look at everybody now.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you so much. It was really helpful, Sarah.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm really glad to hear that.
Can I quickly ask, I want to make sure that I mark down everyone who came today. So who is the SA? Can I get the full name of SA?
Shiva Amadian.
Shiva. Thank you. Perfect. And then who's Y?
Hi, it's Yaneli. Yaneli Delgado.
Yaneli. Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Sarah. This is Tracy talking. You talked about when a very active dog is very jumpy, very mouthy. When they put their paws on me, my inclination is to turn and to verbalize off. And you said the quiet with no, if they're very, very coming at you, that's really a better choice. So this is something that I will definitely need to train myself out of, because that's my habit, is to say off, but you think it's really not useful to use the verbal command at that point?
I generally think that it's not. I mean, if you were in like your own home and you were in like your own personal life with your own personal dog and you had trained them on an off cue, you can absolutely use it. But at the shelter, most of our dogs, they don't know any cues in the first place, so they don't know what they mean. And then the secondary piece of that is that when we talk to them, we are giving them attention. Even though we think it's like negative attention, we're correcting them. They're like, she's talking to me, that's kind of what I wanted, so I'm going to keep doing it. So I like no verbalization at all, and to just remove my attention physically.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question about Myra. So
Yeah.
let's say you go in the yard with her and she's jumping on you, you turn your back to her, and then she goes and like jumps on your back or do something like that. In that situation, would you remove yourself from the yard, or what would you do in that situation?
So I feel like Myra actually is beyond, my experience with her is that she's beyond let's say, like being capable of changing her behavior in the yard environment for any length of time. So she will like sit if you ask her for a treat, but she's very much in that pattern of like, I jump, I sit, I jump, I get a treat, and then I don't get it. And to your point, I'm all over your back. To me, Myra is an example of a dog where we need to change the environment that she's in order to help her to be more successful. If somebody is having great success with her in the yard, I would genuinely love to know what they've been able to do to achieve that. But for me, working with Myra, I feel like we get more out of her, or we can help her more if we take her for, let's say, a longer walk, if we go back into the corral and kind of change the environment that she's in, because that gives us an opportunity to actually engage with her in a way where she's able to. She's not, for whatever reason, all over us and like kind of over there, like in another zone. I find that
Yeah.
she's a dog where I wouldn't spend a lot of yard time with her. I would try and spend time with her in other places. Unless we have like somebody's figured out like a successful strategy for her. But I see her as more of the kind of dog where we need to change what we're doing with her in order to get more out of her and have more success with her.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Tanya.
Hi. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. And it's funny, came to mind because I was like, all of us bring kind of our own experiences to the shelter, and we all kind of
Yeah.
bring our habits, good and bad, to each of the dogs, and so they don't get a lot of consistency, except maybe with us. So I didn't know if you had any recommendations, since like you have a way of handling dogs, I have another way of handling dogs,
Yep.
Shelly has a different way of handling dogs, good or bad, and how do we handle when everybody is different?
I think like on the surface, it's like an unsolvable problem because we are different. And so we're all going to interact with the dogs in a slightly different way, to your point, like based on our own personal experiences with our dogs or whatever we're bringing. Like we all obviously have experiences with dogs, so we bring them to the dogs at the shelter. To me, the best thing we can do, like it's the softer pieces of it for me. So it's less about I do this when a dog is jumping and you do this when a dog is jumping, and it's more about kind of the first part of the session, which is like ensuring that at least when we go work with them, we've all regulated ourselves. We're all present, we're all paying attention, we're all there with them. Because you're right, there's like 100 of us, like maybe more, I think. I don't know. So there's just no plausible way that we're all going to walk into the yard and do the exact same thing with the dog. Like it's never going to happen. So it's more about, can we at least conduct ourselves in ways that are regulated and calm and stable? And that builds some kind of consistency. That's kind of like probably my best suggestion for this kind of environment.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I mean, thanks guys for joining. I appreciate it a lot. This was like the first run through that I've done with it. I think we'll probably do it with all of our new trainees. So thanks for like at least giving me an opportunity to run through it.
Yeah, it was great. You should. This would be great for new volunteers.
I'm glad you feel like that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah,
Super
for all
great.
your
Thank you,
all your
Sarah.
hard work on this. We
Thank
really,
you,
really
Sarah.
appreciate it. And for your
Thanks,
time.
guys. Thank you so much.
too.
I appreciate you guys showing up.
All right,
Thank
everyone,
you
have a
so
good
much.
night. Thank
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Sarah.
Bye. Of course. Bye.
Bye.